Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to episode 4 of Seize and Snatch. I'm Dalton, aka The Shark, and I'm alongside Gabe, aka That Guy Breadstick. And we got a good one for you guys today, as we're going to be talking about what all basketball in the decade, and we're going to create our own all-time decade team. Gabe, I'm very excited about this one. I will say.
I am too. So, just to clarify, are we doing so when you say all decade teams, so we're making a team based off of that decade?
Yes, so
Okay.
we're making like a starting five of all decades from 1960 to 2010s.
Okay. And we're also choosing a team that we think dominated the most in that decade.
Yes,
Cool. Okay.
that's what we're doing.
Just clarifying. All right. So, I guess we'll just start from the top and work our way down. So, the NBA did start in the 60s. So, Dalton, who do you have as the best player in the 60s?
Best player. I mean, it's a no-brainer. It's Bill Russell. I mean, he won like 8 in a row. So I mean, and that was the team in a decade. And then to go along, and also gonna build my starting five here.
Okay.
And Bill Russell, he was 6'10". So I mean, he was more of a four. And then for my center, it's gonna be the man who scored 100 points, Wilt Chamberlain. That'll be my five. And then for my three, it'll probably be a Laker, Elgin Baylor. I mean, he was really good during the 60s. And then for shooting guard, I probably put the logo, Jerry West. He was very good in the 60s as well. And then my point guard, the guy who set the triple double record when he averaged a triple double, as Oscar Robertson. And that is what I have on the 60s.
That is a really good logo. I mean, lineup. I'm trying to think of like what I want to do that may be different than yours. Um, so I think for me, instead of Bill Russell, don't get me wrong, great player, all time, great all time player, but I think for me would probably have to be Wilt Chamberlain being the best in the '60s, just because he was so dominant, especially for the Warriors and the Lakers, and like Bill Russell, he was just a monster in the paint. So I think,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I think he'd be my because yes, Bill Russell is 6'10", but he played more like a center in my opinion than a power forward.
Yeah, because he was probably the biggest guy on his team for the
Mm-hmm.
Celtics.
Yeah. So I'd probably go with. I don't want to do the exact same lineup, so I'm trying to figure out what I would change. Um, I might change out. Okay, so I might. I think this is what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna change Elgin Baylor with John Halvick or Havlicek.
John Havlicek.
Yeah, Havlicek. Sorry, I can't speak
Okay.
today. My mind. I'm half delusional making this episode, just to let you know. But yeah, I think that's my pick. I'd have Elgin Baylor coming
Mhm.
off the bench, but again, I want to keep it fresh. I want to keep it different. You definitely said the top five players coming out, but I just want to keep my lineup a little bit different. But
Yeah, that's fair.
yeah,
Nice.
so that is the '60s, and I'll take on the '70s. So
Okay.
with my starting five from the '70s, I think what I would do is I would go
Okay.
Julius Irvin, um,
Okay. Like
Kareem Abdul-Jabbar,
respect.
Pete Maravich,
Ooh, throwback.
Rick Barry,
Solid.
and I know we said him for the '60s, but I think I'm going to take him for the '70s, and I'm going to take Jerry West.
Interesting.
And then obviously, out of all those players, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to take Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, the Skyhook Man, for my most dominant
Hmm.
player out of the '70s. If you're
I
that tall
agree.
and you can make a move that's so unblockable, especially in especially when you're being that tall, it's just gonna be unstoppable.
I can see that. It's facts. Man, I mean, your lineup is it's pretty similar. Wait, Gabe, you forgot your team.
No,
What
I
was your
did.
team of the seven?
Yeah, I did my team.
What was it? I think I might have missed it.
Well, no, it was just the 5 players I was naming off. I didn't say any specific position.
Oh, okay, okay.
Yeah.
You're right, you're right. I mean, your point guard, I will have to put in Walt Frazier of the New York Knicks. I mean, that man was really good for whenever he was with the Knicks because I think he had Jerry Lucas and Willis Reed, who
Yeah.
were like two really big men, and they won 2 titles. So that's the only thing I would change about your lineup, but everything else I agree with.
Yeah, it was definitely a toss up with Walt Frazier, but that's just what I decided to go with.
That's fair. That's fair.
All right, so Dalton, you want to take the
And
80s?
yes, so I mean, as obvious, Magic Johnson dominated the 80s with the Lakers, winning 5 titles, teaming up with Kareem and and then he eventually added on James Worthy, Byron Scott, and those guys. So obviously Magic Johnson is my point guard, and the Lakers were the team that dominated the 80s. And then for shooting guard, um, I had to put Michael Jordan on there because what he did because he was dominant in the 80s, but I mean he couldn't get past what I had at small forward Larry Bird because that's when Bird hit his prime, winning 3 titles with the Celtics, which is really impressive. And then for my power forward, um, I probably had to go. I probably had to go with the Celtics power forward Kevin McHale. Even though he won 3 with Larry Bird, and he was really good with the Celtics as well. And for my center, this is where it gets challenging. I'm going to say Moses Malone of the Philadelphia 76ers. That man could just rebound. He teamed with Dr. J and Julius Serving and, beat Magic and Kareem, which that's one big accomplishment. So, yeah, that is what I have on the 80s. Gabe, do you agree or disagree with anything?
I agree with most of it. Again, I'm just trying to keep it different because I just want us to have a little bit of space between our lineups. I just don't want to be agreeing. So this is what I have. I have Magic at the 1. I'm actually gonna put Isaiah Thomas at the 2, even though he did play the 1. I think that he just having him next to Magic Johnson will work very well together. And being a 20 point per game, 10 assists, 2 steals per game player, I think he'll be pretty good at that position. Then I have Dominique Wilkins at the 3. Then I have Kevin McHale at the 4, and I have Hakeem Olajuwon at the 5.
Hakeem dominated in the 80s?
Yeah, Hakeem did dominate in the 80s.
Interesting.
All right.
I never expected that.
So if you don't
now let's go on to the 90s.
Yeah, if you don't mind, I'll take the 90s. Or wait, did we say who's the who dominated the best in our opinion for the 80s?
I mean, I said mine is Magic.
Well, yeah, I agree with that. Magic Johnson, number 1. All right, so So obviously for the 90s, you have to give it to Michael Jordan. If you just don't, then I don't know what you're doing with your life or you're watching basketball. Fun fact, I never actually watched The Last Dance, and yet here I am talking about basketball. I just already knew what I knew, so I just didn't decide to go with it.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, so for point guard, I'm going to go John Stockton. Him and... Okay. Him and I can't think of his Karl Malone. They did really well together. Made it to the finals twice, but obviously lost to the Bulls. Then I'm gonna go Jordan at the 2 because greatest player of all time. Then I'm gonna give him his right hand man, Scottie Pippen, at the 3. Then I'm gonna go Karl Malone. So we have 2 dynamic duos together in the same lineup. Then actually, this is why I didn't go Kareem. Or not Kareem. Hakeem Olajuwon because I'm gonna go Shaq at the 4. I mean at the 5 because I think he dominated more in the 90s rather than the 2000s.
Interesting take. I will say that. I mean, I agree with you for the most part. I would change my center though to obviously Hakeem Olajuwon. You know, it went back to back. He did beat Shaq in the 1995 finals. You know, he took down Shaq and Penny Hardaway, and he had his right hand man, Clyde Drexler. But yeah, Hakeem dominated the 90s. And, you know, he won MVP and Defensive Player of the Year in 1994. So, I mean, everything else, I agree with you.
Yeah, I just put Hakeem in the 80s, so I was like, I don't want to put him in the 90s again. I don't want to repeat. I'm trying to stay consistent, so that's why I put him there. That's why I put Shaq there.
Fair enough.
Because I know who my center is going to be in the next one. So Dalton, take it away for the 2000s.
Absolutely. So, obviously, the team that dominated the 2000s. I mean, it would have to be the Spurs or the Lakers.
Mm-hmm.
But in my opinion, I'm probably gonna have to go with the Spurs, only because you know they had Tim Duncan. You know, one of the best power forwards to ever play the game. You know, he wrote out with David Robinson, and then he added Tony Parker and Manu Ginobili, and he had Coach Popovich by his side. So that's definitely a big thing. And obviously the Lakers, Kobe Bryant, he's obviously on there. You know, he's the 2, and yeah, that Kobe Bryant obviously winning 3 titles, even though. Well, no, he won 4, but yeah,
he won 5.
3 of them were.
He won 5.
Yeah, I know that, but like, because he won back to back in 2009, 2010. So, I mean, Kobe's my 2, Duncan's my 4. A small forward, I will probably have to give it to. I'm gonna throw a little curveball here. Tracy McGrady. You know, he really dominated the 2000s. You know, with the Magic, and then he joined Houston Rockets with Yao Ming, and then my center is going to be Shaq, only because he went on to three-peat, and he won with D Wade in 06. And then my point guard, it is going to be Allen Iverson, because you know he was only 6 foot tall, and you know he won MVP in 2001. And, you know, he went to the finals, lost to Kobe and Shaq. But, you know, but those right there are my starting 5. And then I gave out my thoughts on the team, which was the Spurs. And Duncan was the most dominant player. Gabe, what are your thoughts?
Stat-wise, I do think Duncan is the better player. But I think for most dominant, I think you can't forget about Kobe Bryant, and you can't mistreat him. He did win 5 championships. He won. I would say he didn't necessarily win his last 2 alone, but it was against a great Celtics team both years, and he didn't have Shaq or Tony Parker or Manu Ginobili by his side. Yes, he might have had Paul Gasol, but that saying Paul Gasol was your second person isn't that big of a stretch. Mm-hmm. Even though he was great in his prime, don't get me wrong, Paul Gasol is probably going to be one of the best NBA centers in history, maybe top 15. But no, I think Kobe for me was probably more dominant than Duncan. But my lineup, actually, I'm going to go with the point. I'm going to go Steve Nash at the point. I think he's a great passer. He's a small little dude running up the court. I think he's what a true point guard was for that era. Then I'm going to go Kobe at the shooting guard, because you can't leave out Kobe. It was hard to put. It was because I wanted to put Wade up here, but Wade's just not going to fit anywhere else. He'd only fit at the shooting guard position, and Kobe's the only person that should be there. But yeah. then I put the Celtics people, Pierce and Garnett, together at 3 and the 4. I think they did really well, even though they only won 1 championship together. They lost 2 to the Lakers, but that doesn't mean that they were still dominant. Then I have Duncan at my 5. I was really trying to go against my Asian side and put Yao Ming. I was trying to put Yao Ming up there, but I decided not to, and I decided to stick with what I wanted to. In my all-time 5, I have Duncan rounding it out.
That's good. I mean, Yao Ming was a great player. I mean, even though he only played 8 seasons
Yeah,
because he got hurt.
he had injury problems.
Yep. Anyway, all right, Gabe. So you finish it off with the 2010s.
All right, so with my 2010s, the most dominant player, you could either choose the babyface assassin Steph Curry, or you can choose the king himself, LeBron. Because the Warriors went to 5 championships and won 3. LeBron went to 8 championships and won 3. Or are we count 20? No, 2020 is counting as the 20s or 2020s, not 2010s. Yeah. Okay, so
That's
yeah, so then 20s. So then he only won 3. But I think, not being biased, I kind of have to give it to LeBron. LeBron has been there the entire thing. Steph only came into it like 2013 through 2020. LeBron's been there all 10 years, so I gotta give it to him. But for my all decade first team, I've got to give Steph the point guard position. He's the best shooter we've ever seen, arguably top 3, even arguably top point guard of all time. Maybe above Magic when his career ends. We'll see. Some people say it's now, but I think give him till the end and we'll see what happens. Then I have James Harden at my 2 because there's no other shooting guard that's really dominated like he has at that position. It's always James Harden, and then you have your top 4 after him. But James Harden has consistently stayed at that 5 or at that shooting guard position. Small forward, you got to give it to the king, LeBron James. Knows how to lead a team correctly with very little of what he has. Even though, like the last few years, he's had Kevin Love, Dwayne Wade, Chris Bosh, Kyrie Irving, Anthony Davis. He's had the talent, but he's shown that he can take a team from the bottom up. But even with that now, it seems like you need to have at least 3 fringe all-starters in order to like really, really compete for the title spot. Then I'm going to go Kevin Durant at the 4. I know he plays the 3, but I'm going to give it to him at the 4 because you can't leave out Kevin Durant. He came back from an Achilles injury. And is playing out of his mind. He's playing like the Kevin Durant we know. That's statistically against him. So gotta give it to him. 2-time championship, 2-time Finals MVP, 1-time MVP. Just bad man. And then center. Ooh, this is hard.
This is gonna be challenging.
Yeah. I might actually not go with center. I might leave this for the deciding vote but I might have to just go another forward. I think that's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna go Kawhi Leonard. Kawhi Leonard's arguably one of the best 2-way players that we've ever seen play the game. He can do it offensively and defensively. He's won 2 championships and 2 Finals MVPs in his career. I think that there's just not really that big of a center, in my opinion, that really dominated like the other eras. It's just these 5 men have done it for this era of basketball the most. If I had to pick a center, it'd probably be like Anthony Davis, but I just think he was so young and he was on a team like the Pelicans that he didn't go anywhere with it. Yes, James Harden's the only one that hasn't won a championship, but you can tell that it always has been him at the shooting guard, and for number 1 this entire time. The only arguable player that people are saying is arguable, and I'm kind of being a little biased, is Klay Thompson. Just because he's another good 2-way player that plays that position very well. But it's got to be James Harden.
It has to.
Yes.
It has to. I will say, even though, LeBron dominated, either you give it to the Heat or you give it to Golden State. Because, they both went back-to-back. Heat had the big 3, LeBron, Wade, and Bosh. And then Golden State had Curry, Durant, and Thompson. But I'll probably have to give it – I'm going to support you, Gabe. I'm going to go with Golden State. They dominated that. They dominated the 10s, going to the finals 5 times, coming away with 3. I do agree. I do agree with most of your stuff. But for center, I'm gonna have to give it to the Greek freak, Giannis Antetokounmpo. I mean, that man, he can go up the floor with ease, and he can. I mean, like it could literally take him like 2 or 3 dribbles, and he'll just jump from the free throw line and dunk it. And I will say, him winning MVP in 2019, it was a bit controversial. I will say only because James Harden put up like 37 points a game that year, and Giannis went all the way to the conference finals, lost to Kawhi and the Raptors, and then with Harden, going to the second round, losing to Golden State. But yeah, I'm gonna give it to Giannis at the 5. Everything else, what you said, I agree with. That's my take.
See, I've got 3 points that you've made. So with Golden State, I just want to compare them to another team. So, like how people say Steph Curry really changed the game. It went from a fadeaway mid-range jumper game to a ball-dominant three-point game just because of Steph Curry and that team. And that's just the way they shaped that. And once people saw it, no one knew how to defend that. And what I'm going to compare it to is to the regular season. The regular season 2019 Ravens. Whenever Lamar Jackson came in and he basically put everybody on skates, just running around as a quarterback and scoring rushing touchdowns, the game really hasn't really seen that, so no one knew how to guard it in the regular season. Yes, they did get absolutely pummeled by Derrick Henry in the first round, or their first round, because they had the first round bye. I'm pretty sure. I can't remember, but no, but there's a reason why Lamar Jackson won MVP that year. It's because he changed the game. He didn't change the game. He added a new implementation to football, which made it hard to guard, which is what Steph Curry has done. But Steph Curry has taken it to another level and has changed the game. That's why That's why Golden State was so dominant. Yes, they might have had 4 All-Stars at one point, but then what can you do about that, right? It's like they have a cap space for a reason. If they're able to limit that within the cap space, then you can do what you want. You just have to play against it. Then my second point is, yes, you said the Greek freak, but this is why I didn't put him in there, because he didn't get dominant until like 2017, 2018. But it really didn't show until like late 2018. And yes, he can drop. And yes, he is probably the most unstoppable player in the league that in the paint. But if he gets a jump shot, probably maybe one of the best players ever, skill-wise. Maybe not accolades-wise, because he hasn't gotten there yet, because he's still with the Bucks, and the Bucks haven't really gone anywhere. And what you're saying, how it's controversy about James Harden, where he should have probably made MVP that year. If you think about it, James Harden, he was like, even though if he had like Chris Paul and whatnot, it was coming off from a year where they went to the conference finals and arguably probably maybe should have beaten the Warriors there. Who knows? We will never know because Chris Paul got injured. But maybe should have been beat the Warriors there. But then they had a big decline. Like, yes, they still made the playoffs. They made the conference finals, or conference semifinals, lost to the Warriors. But they had a big decline that year. And even though he's scoring 37 points per game, that's not going to do it for you in basketball. Like, another good player that probably should be in the MVP talk every single year, Damian Lillard. You want to know why he's not a finalist, though? Or, in James Harden's case, doesn't win it as often? Because his team doesn't go anywhere with it. There's the MVP award. There's so many asterisks next to it that makes up the award, and being your team's overall record and how marketable you are two different asterisks that James Harden does not have, which is why he lost to Steph Curry in 2015 and 2016. He lost to I thought he should have actually won it in 2017, but he didn't. He lost to Russell Westbrook because, in my opinion, I think the NBA is a ratings league. It's all about ratings, so I think giving it to Russell Westbrook after he got a triple-double and after Kevin Durant left, I think that would have made headlines. Then there's no excuse to give it to him in 2018, because 2018 he led the Rockets to a 1 seed against the Warriors, who had 4 fringe All-Stars. Then 2019, yes, he might have gotten 37 points per game, but he wasn't performing nearly as well as he was before. He was just basically putting points in the box, like he was doing that. Yet, but points isn't the entire just basketball game. If it was just putting in points, then like any player could do that. Kevin Durant could go for 50 if he wanted to, but that's not what the game is about. Then again, you can't give you're gonna have to give it Giannis back to back when he leads his team to the East. Whenever his second best player is Chris Middleton, but because of voter fatigue, I'm pretty sure that either James Harden or Giannis probably won't get it. Even if they're both Finals MVPs, they're probably gonna give it to that third person.
Yep. I see your point. Points you've made.
Yeah. All right. So now, Dalton, I'm gonna ask you. Out of all of those decades, you can only pick 5 players. Choose your lineup.
Wow. Okay, I'm gonna go one from each.
Okay.
So point guard, obviously Magic in the
Okay.
'80s, Jordan from the '90s,
Okay.
then LeBron in the '10s.
Mm-hmm.
And then we'll go at the 4. We'll probably go Tim Duncan, and at the 5 we go Kareem. Those are my 5 best. Gabe, what can you do to match it?
I like what you're doing, but I'm gonna have to switch it up on you. This is what I'm gonna have to do.
Okay, let's hear it.
Alright, I'm gonna be a little biased. Curry at the 1, just because he's the greatest shooter of all time, and something that he can do that Magic can't, he's fine without playing with the ball. He can be great off ball. That's what makes Steph Curry so great. Yes, he can hold the ball the entire game like James Harden does, but he doesn't. He runs around 17 screens before he actually catches and shoots the ball. That's the amazing thing about Steph Curry, is that he doesn't have to have the ball in his hands 24/7 in order to be dominant. Shooting guard, obviously you have to go Michael Jordan.
Okay, that's good.
The 3, I'm going to have to give it to LeBron James. The 4.
Okay. Ooh.
I'm running out of space now.
Oh,
I'm going to have to switch someone over from center to power forward. I'm going to put Tim Duncan there. Just the fundamental leadership of him and just the humbleness that he has. I think that would be great for the team. And then I'm going to have to give it to Shaq at the 5 because he was so dominant.
Yeah. I mean, I see where you're coming from, but I got to say Kareem, though. I mean, he did win 6 titles. In the first one, he won it with Oscar Robertson in the Bucks.
Mm-hmm.
And then won the rest with Magic in the Lakers. So, but with Shaq, I mean, he also won through Kobe. I mean, it was obvious. I mean, they beat the first team they beat was Pacers. I mean, they beat them in 6. They beat Philly, Allen Iverson in 5, and then they swept the Nets. So I mean, you could say that they've had an easy route, but while with Kareem, I mean, they had to face Larry Bird and the Boston Celtics, the Ken McHale and those guys. And, you know, that was more of the thing. Like the Celtics and Lakers rivalry was more of a thing. And with the Lakers, I mean, in their time, it was definitely like they just matched up with whoever. And so I think, that's just my take on saying that Kareem, on why I put Kareem over Shaq. So
it's just the big question for this all-time lineup is, what era are we playing with? Because the problem with your lineup is, if we're playing in the 2010s era, especially the back half of the 2010s, there's no three-point shooting to your lineup. That's the issue with this question, is that you can choose how many players you want. It's just, what are you looking for? What era are we playing in? Because that really defines it. If we're playing in the 90s, of course you're probably not going to put Steph Curry in there because he's so little And even though that 3-point shooting wasn't that big back then, he's gonna get rocked by how many bigger guys are there. If we're going 2010s, you're probably not gonna put like Wilt Chamberlain there because he's kind of slow and can't keep up with the pace of the game now. Because all the rookies, all they talk about is the speed of the game and how that catches you by surprise because you don't realize how fast it's going. But I think that's like the difference between this question because it's so loaded because you don't think about what era we're playing in. And I think when people go, like they go the Bulls versus the Warriors or the Lakers versus whatever, they don't realize what era are we playing in. Because that really defines the difference between things.
Mm-hmm. I see what you're saying. But...
And the refs are going to be a little bit more, like, not as lenient with, like, an older era compared to the newer era, where people are getting to the free throw line easier. Like, the other night, I think Steph Curry made it to the free throw line for 18 free throws. Like, so he made it to the line at least maybe 9 times. That wouldn't happen in, like, a different game.
Yeah, and in like the 90s, you wouldn't even like you would barely see it. You only get to line like 3 or 4 times. While in like today's era, they're being so sensitive and being so lenient. I mean, you get to go to the line as many times as you want, pretty much. That's the big thing.
Definitely, and I think not even just basketball. I think football is like that too. How like you can't hit the players as hard, or you can't do this or that because then you'll get flagged. So then people are making excuses how defenses are weak because they're not able to do what they used to do. And in older eras of football, you would be able to rock the person if you were on defense and like pop him whenever he catches the ball and then make him drop it. But now if you do that in the league now, it could be it could be pass interference, it could be personal foul, it could be roughing the passer, it could be anything. And it's not necessarily it's gotten soft. I think just injuries are a big thing now, so it's like they don't want to take the chance.
That's fair. I mean, I see where they're coming from, but I mean, it's always good, like you said in football, where like you like if you're on defense, you absolutely pop someone, and then and rather like in the NBA, like where you just see like people getting chippy and and just like have big guys like Shaq just bully everybody. So that's what I think. That's more of like the fan favorite, and then and nowadays where everything's more like a cupcake, where you can like pretty much just like if you get touched by someone, they're gonna call a foul, and I think in my opinion, I just think that's the reason why like fans like the streams have gone a little bit downward, only because like it's not as fun as it used to be in a way.
No, yeah, I totally agree with that. It's completely different than what it used to be.
For sure.
All right, so that's gonna do it for today's episode of Season Snatch. Dalton, you want to take us out, or you want me to take us out?
I'll take us out. So, like Gabe said, the final episode, not the final episode. I'm just kidding. We got plenty more coming. We're gonna be uploading videos weekly. And the last time I'm Dalton, and last time for now, I'm Dalton, aka the Shark. That's Gabe, aka the Bristic, and we'll see you soon.
Peace.